All right, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Chris McKenna. I'm the founder and CEO of Protect Young Eyes, and thank you so much for joining us here this evening. We're going to begin our very first of a whole series of webinars we're going to be doing during the month of May. It's just an important time to be speaking very openly and honestly about technology. I'm in Michigan, and like many of you, have had a very interesting last couple of months with technology. And I want us to be very open and honest about these conversations and speak as parents who are dealing real time with issues that we've never dealt with before. And so tonight's topic is definitely one that is pertinent to maybe the situation that we find ourselves in right now. And so I am joined tonight by a couple members of the Protect Young Eyes team. Michelle, who works with me, she's going to be addressing some of the items in the Q&A. Just to orient ourselves around how the webinar is going to work, at the bottom of your screen, likely the Zoom app that you're using is giving you a couple of options. You'll see down there that there's a chat where you can just drop in a message, but most helpful is probably the Q&A feature, where you're able to ask a question of the panelists, which in this case is me and Michelle, and then Michelle will be able to respond to your questions there, and we'll do that kind of throughout the presentation. And so, yeah, and during the presentation, there's a few poll questions that we'll ask just to sort of keep us involved. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my screen shared here. I wanna stick with our time frame. We wanna keep real tight to the 30 minutes that we've got set up here. So this is the Tech Ready Parent. I'm gonna play us from the start here. Pro Kid, Pro Tech, and Protect. That's a very important set of words there because we are a very pro-technology organization. We want kids to learn how to use technology well in this digital age and not to be afraid of it. And so tonight we are going to talk about the toxic trio and what that looks like. Just so that you know what's on the horizon, you can see the different topics that we have set up here during the month of May. So next week we'll be talking about Snapchat, doing some walkthroughs of the different features in Snapchat. I want you to know that Snapchat isn't all bad. There are things in Snapchat that I don't love, but there are some really fun things about Snapchat too. We're going to talk about that. And then on the 21st, the skinny on porn. I'm one that speaks very openly and honestly about pornography. So you're going to hear a lot of what I hope are helpful tips for you to have those conversations with your young people that you care for. And then finally, there at the end of May, TikTok isn't all bad. TikTok is the fastest growing social media platform. It just this week passed 2 billion users. Other than Facebook's family of apps, which is WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, TikTok is the only other platform that has achieved that goal. So it is a force to be reckoned with. And we'll talk about those features that it has. And then in June, you can see some of the topics that we have coming up. None of those are available for registration yet. We were sort of waiting to see what the demand was going to be for the topics here in May. And based on the response, which has been fabulous, we're going to open up registration for June here very soon. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to refer often to our website, protectyoungeyes.com. Many of you are probably already familiar with it. We have a detailed blog where we do research. We're constantly looking at the apps that kids are using. You can see a whole wall of over 70 apps that we have analyzed. We go through all the parental controls step by step for the different devices that kids are using today. We want this to be a resource for you. All of that which you just saw was free. We want to remove as many barriers as possible between good parents and grandparents like you and the best information so that you can make good decisions in the digital age with your young people. So I'm going to start off right now with a poll question. I'm going to put it up here on the screen. Poll number 1 is, let's see where you're from. You can see the different regions of the United States that I've got listed up there. If you could go ahead and respond to that poll question for me, just to get a sense of where everybody is visiting us from today. I have both places in the US, but I also have I'm outside of the US there at the very bottom. So if you could do that for me, I would appreciate it. Just about 5 more seconds. Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna end that poll and I'm gonna share the results. You can see that the Midwest is winning, at least tonight, which isn't a surprise. I'm here as many of the Protect Young Eyes team based in Michigan, but gosh, we've got the whole US covered and we've got 5% of you from outside. So glad that you're with us here tonight. from wherever you are at, because I believe that whether we're in a pandemic or not, or whether we're in the US or somewhere else, many of the things that we're going to talk about here tonight, I hope are helpful for you. Our foundation at Protect Young Eyes is this statement that you see up on the screen, that parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, foster parents, whatever type of caring adult you are, that those who are observant, engaged, and informed often have kids who learn how to use technology well. It's a really foundational statement. And I want those three words to sink in for just a minute, right? Observant, engaged, and informed. And then also along with that, this slide right here is, I'll call it our one-page framework for everything that we teach at Protect Young Eyes. And you're going to see me reference this framework throughout this conversation about the toxic trio, that there's a continuum of digital trust that exists in every home today. And I want us to be somewhere in the middle where we are having the types of conversations and the types of interactions with our young people that are building digital trust. And on either end of that middle are places where we're either eroding digital trust or there's just a complete lack of digital trust, right? So on the one end of the spectrum on the left, if you're constantly using control and fear and bubble wrapping your kids from technology, or just too busy to engage, in the right conversations, or helicoptering and preventing them from experiencing any kind of hardship online, I think that that is an erosion of digital trust. You're not teaching them anything about existing in the digital world. On the other end of that spectrum then, where you're just not in tune, you're indifferent, you're apathetic, you're ignorant to some of the risks that are out there, you're just not building any trust at all. But in the middle, the hard work is in the middle. And there are some words that I think characterize that hard work in the middle, and that is to copy, in other words, modeling the right behavior, co-play, you're gonna hear me say that one, where we're doing things with our young people. Curiosity, do you have an attitude of curiosity about how they use their technology and not condemnation? Conversation, are you having the right conversations with them? And then do you see the things that you're doing as caring control and not just parental control? Are you inviting them into the conversations around the types of things that you're doing to control their usage, or is it just a my way or the highway, and we're going to put this parental control solution in place and you have no say in it? Because I think that can be a position that can sometimes erode digital trust. So this is what I'll refer to as the Protect Young Eyes Digital Trust Framework. It's something that you'll hear me refer to often throughout the presentation here tonight as we jump into the toxic trio. Number one, in talking about the toxic trio, is this, that there is a power of time, the power of time. In other words, when kids and adults use technology has a massive impact on how they use technology. In other words, the time of day matters. One of the things that we love doing at Protect Young Eyes when we're not in the middle of a pandemic is we do presentations all over the country at churches and schools. In fact, last year we did over 340 of them. I have a feeling that's going to change here for the next 12 months, but we love getting in front of parents and kids. And when we get in front of kids, we often ask them different questions. And so we have surveys that we give young people to ask them about certain things that they're doing online. One of the recent surveys that we did with a public school that we worked with showed that for kids in grades 3 through 8, that 45% of them sleep with their phone right next to them. I think that's an important statistic to pay attention to, because when you look at what that phone next to us does, that blue light emitted, and there's a temptation to check that device all night long. Blue light emitted, you can see here from Dr. Jean Twenge, by our smartphones and tablets simulates daylight, inhibiting the brain's production of melatonin, the hormone that helps us fall asleep and stay asleep. And so again, whether you're a teen or an adult, checking our phone at night, that blue light shining in our face can actually trick the brain's circadian rhythm into thinking that it's daytime and decreasing that melatonin output. That can have a huge impact on a child's sleep, which when they're sleep deprived, they make different choices. Another result of the surveys that we've done with young people, and this is with teens in high school, is that 36% of the teens that we have surveyed say that sometimes they use their phone all night long, which again is just crazy for me to think about, that they have been on their device all night long. And I've heard stories from them where like they binged all night on some YouTube channel or something all night long. And so again, that's having an impact on how they use their technology. That's the power of time in talking about the toxic trio. The next one I want to talk about is the power of place, right? The power of place. Where kids and adults use technology has a massive impact on how they use technology. We've talked about time and we've talked about place. Funny story about place, one of the rules. So just to let you know about the McKenna family, okay, we have 4 children. I have a daughter who's 15. I have twin sons who are 10, and I have another son who's 8. So we have 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 9th grade right now. This is a photo of something that my daughter was very proud of 2 years ago when she was 13. One of the rules that we have had is there are no internet-ready devices in the bedrooms. Now, of course, during the pandemic, that looks a little bit different. We don't have a big house, and so sometimes to get a little privacy for school and some virtual learning, we've flexed a little bit. But overall, no digital devices in the bedroom. And Lauren was so proud to show me one day how she was still able to watch a movie on her Kindle outside of her bedroom and yet still be in her bedroom. If you could have seen the other side of this, she had couch, kind of cushions and all kinds of comfy space going on where she was lounging and watching her Kindle outside of her bedroom. And she was so proud to show me this. Like, she came upstairs and said, Dad, look what I did. I'm still obeying the rule. But she had found a loophole, which I just thought was super creative. But she was paying attention to the power of place. And so I want to go to poll question number 2, which you're going to see up on the screen here, which asks a couple of questions. Let me go ahead and launch that poll. Question number 1, do you allow your kids to use internet-ready devices in their bedrooms? Yes or no? And just to let you know, I don't know who's answering what. I have the toggle set in Zoom so that I don't know what response goes with each answer because privacy is very important. The second question there is, do you allow your kids to sleep with a smartphone in their room? Yes or no? Maybe for an alarm or other purposes, listen to music. I know sometimes those situations are present. Go ahead and answer that for 5 more seconds. Great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. I'll share those results and we can see almost 50-50 on the do you allow your kids to use internet-ready devices in their bedrooms? Great. And then number 2, do you allow your kids to sleep with a smartphone in their room? Just over 10% of you said yes, and a pretty decent percentage of you said no. Very good. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to stop that share. Now, friends, I want to be very clear on something. Asking questions like that is in no way intended to make you feel guilty about anything. I just simply want to create conversation. Every family and every situation is a little bit different. And if your situation dictates a slightly different way, then I am good with that. You know your kids best. I just want to communicate certain principles, certain things that we've learned, and then allow you to apply it in the way that works best for your family. Okay, so let's move on then to the power of purpose. We've talked about the power of time, the power of place, and now the power of purpose. That how kids and adults feel when they use technology has a massive impact on how they use technology. And so in summary, the toxic trio looks like this: nighttime, bedrooms, and boredom. That's time, place, and purpose. Whenever those 3 things are lacking when it comes to the time, place, and purpose, or wherever these 3 things are present, nighttime, bedroom, and boredom, that's what we're referring to when we say the toxic trio. That in our experience, both as parents and on the Protect Young Eyes team, there's 7 of us. We have a lot of kids and a lot of parenting. And a lot of times we've screwed up too, to be perfectly honest. But just from our own experience and our practice with kids, some of us come from ministry, some of us come from education, that we've just noticed that when these 3 things are present, it leads to a tempting situation. Not all the time, but sometimes. And let me be really honest. They don't just lead to a tempting situation for teens. Those 3 things sometimes lead to tempting situations for us as parents, if we're really, really honest, okay? So that's what we mean by the toxic trio. But I don't just want to talk about the problem. I want to talk about some of the solutions. What are some of the things that we can do as defense against the trio? And the number 1 defense that I have found to work against the trio is to discuss expectations. Notice that I've crossed off the word state. This isn't a my way or the highway kind of conversation. This is a discussion about expectations. And you can see in the subtext there down below A rule they help create is always a rule they are more bound to obey. Any chance that we have to invite young people into the conversation around the choices that we want to make as a family unit around technology are going to be beneficial. In other words, there are certain phrases that I love to hear. And some examples that I have up on the screen here are phrases that I think are helpful when it comes to co-developing some of these expectations are, right? Whether you're 14 or 40, not much life-giving stuff happens online after 10 p.m. In other words, if the rule is they can't be online after 10, then you probably shouldn't either. Or maybe that question on the lower right-hand corner there, ask your teen son or daughter this question. How do you feel about how dad and I or mom and I use our phones? Does something need to change? Get their perspective on how you use technology to invite them into a conversation, okay? Or if you're wanting to block pornography, say, on the router or some other level, right? Invite them into that. If you want them to help set up the controls on the router, great. Maybe change the password afterwards. But anything that we can do to invite them into this conversation is going to be helpful. When you think back to the framework, one of the things that I talked about was not just parental control, but caring control. I think when we have these kinds of open and honest conversations with our kids about our expectations, that's creating digital trust. And that is an example of caring control and not just parental control, my way or the highway. So that's what we mean by that, to discuss the expectations. All right, the number 2 defense against the trio is to know your router. Get to know your router. It is the most underutilized in terms of attention, but overutilized in terms of bandwidth device in our house. And I think it has the single number 1 potential in terms of helping us control internet usage in our home. Get to know your router. The one that you see up on the screen there is the Griffin Tower. That's one of the routers that we recommend. On the screen here, under devices, this is at protectyoungeyes.com. If you click on devices, and then scroll down to the bottom, you'll see where it says wireless and routers. If you click on that, you're gonna see some of our explanations around routers, because they can sometimes be intimidating, what to do with them, how to get to the dashboard in order to change certain things. We also recommend certain routers in there. So if you're at a spot where it's time for a new one, which I'm sure some of you are, there are many that we have tested that we recommend that you can read about there on the website under devices. A really funny story about routers. There was routers and or modems. There was a story, a Facebook post that was shared by a couple parents in Australia, and it went viral, right? You can read it there on the screen from this Casey Langan. She said, "We asked our kids if they would like to go on a day trip to this particular place today, and we were met with the response, 'That's so boring, I don't want to go.' Chris and I," this is her husband, "and I decided that instead of taking 3 unappreciative kids out, we let the ones who didn't want to go stay home and took our most overworked family member for a well-deserved day out, our modem. Modem had a fantastic day not being used by the kids, and it was lovely not to listen to constant bickering. The only complaining was Evan, the one child that went with them, being mortified that we took our modem out in public." And if you were to find this post, which is really easy to find, if you just go into Google and type in Australia modem day trip or any combination of those words, they posted all of these fabulously hilarious pictures of modem in different places. Modem eating a sub sandwich with a Coca-Cola, modem at the beach, and it went viral. So well played, Mom and Dad. Good job. It looks like modem had a wonderful day. So get to know your router. The number 3 defense against the trio is to obey the same rules. That according to multiple studies, the American Pediatric Association, the World Health Organization, these are purely scientific, secular studies, how adults in the home use technology is the number 1 indicator as to how well kids use technology in the home. We need to look in the mirror sometimes. And at Protect Young Eyes, we have a lot of conversations with young people in our talks. We go to elementary schools and we talk to kids all the time. And Rose, who's a wonderful member of my presentation team, she was speaking to a group of 2nd graders. And at the end of the talk with 2nd graders, you're always bombarded with a lot of them coming up to the front and telling you all of their favorite YouTube videos, right? Dude Perfect this, cat this, all these different things. But at the end of this one talk that Rose had, there was a second grade boy that came up to her and he was crying. Now, this is not the response that we want in our presentations. We don't want second grade boys and girls crying at the end of our talks. But it was through tears that this second grade boy said to her, Miss Rose, I've told my mom to put her phone down and she just won't. And it was just this heartbreaking situation with this young boy who is wanting so desperately the attention of his parent, and mom is ignoring him because of whatever she's doing on the phone. And so I just think it's an opportunity for us, again, not to heap any kind of guilt or shame on us, but just to do a gut check, a self-assessment. How are we doing? I just recently read an article that talks about screen time as the new secondhand smoke. That when we're robbing our young people that we care for in our home of actual interaction, that it can have sometimes negative impacts on their development, how they relate to each other, their social, emotional development. We just need to be aware of those things. So again, back to the framework, right? We've talked about the toxic trio. We've talked about some of the defenses around the expectations that we work out with them, to know the router in your home, and then to model some of those behaviors. And you can see when we're doing those things, we're sitting squarely there in the middle of copy me, right? I'm modeling for you, right? To have caring control, not just parental control, inviting them into those conversations, being insanely curious about how they use their technology and not condemning. Because if you understand where kids click, you understand a lot about the things that they love or the things that they're curious about. And then to co-play with them, to sit down and play the Switch with them. Because if your 9 or 10-year-old son or daughter enjoys playing video games with you when they're 9 or 10, then the prospect of you being involved in their social media behavior later on seems a whole lot less intrusive, right? That's what we mean by co-play. And so this framework guides everything that we teach. In fact, everybody who is registered for this specific webinar here, you're going to get an email from me after the fact, which will include a link to these slides. We're not quite done yet, but you're going to get a link to these slides. But you're also going to be invited into a 5-email video course which explains each of these 5 words in great detail, because it is so important. And that's all free. It is so important to us at Protect Young Eyes that we are helping parents, grandparents, caring adults like you to create bridges of digital trust. Because if we don't have the trust, then we don't have the platform in order to have the difficult conversations. In addition to some of the internet and parental control and other advice things that we do at Protect Young Eyes, we're big advocates at a national level for some of the changes that need to be made in order to protect our children, because there are laws that have been on the books for decades that could not have envisioned some of the digital risk that we have today. So back in 2019, we started the Fixed App Ratings movement, which led to being invited to a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing back on July 9th, which was a fabulous, but I got to be honest, a terrifying experience to be a part of that. And that has led to other opportunities to be in Washington, D.C. and to speak in order to advocate for kids to get certain features turned off in devices and apps that kids are using, because it is noble for us to be fighting for our children. So that's something that we feel very strongly about. It's not just okay to complain about what's broken about technology. We think it's time to do something about some of the things that are broken and change some of the laws that could not have conceived some of the risks that we have today. So that's very, very important to us. So poll question number 3 that I'm going to put up before we go ahead and end a few things here is, I want to know from you, really, really honest, whether or not some of the information that I've shared here is helpful. Again, we want to do these presentations throughout the month of May. I'm going to give you my email address in the email that I send to you after this is over. And if there's anything that wasn't helpful that you felt could have been shared in a different way, please, I promise that I'll respond personally and address any of those items, because we want these webinars to be top-notch and as helpful to parents as possible. And many of you are responding to that right now. So thank you so much for that feedback. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll now and stop that and go ahead and continue. There are other ways to stay in touch with us. Again, we're very active on social media ourselves. We have a very active Facebook page, Instagram. We're also starting a YouTube channel where we're sharing helpful videos. But probably the most utilized way that parents and caring adults stay in touch with us is through our weekly free newsletter, where we unpack digital trends, share things that we've posted on the website, new blog posts and things. All you have to do, you can do this anytime. For those in the United States, just text the word protect to the number 66866, and you'll automatically be added to our MailChimp newsletter list. If you are outside of the United States, go to the website, and there's going to be a little opt-in up in the corner of most of the pages, and just drop your email address in there and the exact same thing will happen, and you'll be able to receive that newsletter for free. Again, these are the topics that we have coming up. Snapchat next week, and many of you have already registered for that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share on my screen. I'm going to take a look at the Q&A and see how things are doing here. We've had some questions asked and answered by Michelle, which is great. We've got one more there that we're going to address. I'm going to take a look at the chat. All right, so good. It looks like we are fairly clear of things. Friends, thank you so much. It is 8:57. I want to hold true to the timing here. I would invite you to come back. If you enjoyed this, please tell a friend about it, so that we can have more good discussions, because I believe very firmly in the power of a village approach to teaching our kids about technology. We never know where they're going to be somewhere else when they're exposed to something. We need as many parents in their lives and grandparents in their lives informed about some of these risks, so that we can be helping them all together, having all the same conversations. So thank you so much for being a part of this webinar tonight. Wherever you are, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your evening, and look for an email from the Protect Young Eyes team within the next 24 hours that will point you to these slides and give you the opportunity to ask us any other questions. Have a great night.